Well, here's a video that I didn't anticipate or want to be making. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in this tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. So I have some disappointing news, and that is that I'm going to have to move the tiny house. So let me tell you all about it. As my younger kid likes to say, the story begins last winter, last December, mid-December. I was working at my desk. It was a weekday, I think a Tuesday or something like that. And I got a knock at the door, and it was a bylaw officer, a lovely lady named Jessica. So Jessica informed me that there had been a complaint about the tiny house, that she was going to be walking around my site and the house, and she just wanted to let me know, but she couldn't talk to me much. She couldn't tell me anything because I was not the landowner. But she just wanted to let me know why she was going to be around the house, because I certainly would have been wondering who that was and what they were doing. So shortly after that, I get a text from my landlord, and he said, "We need to talk." And I'm like, "Yes, we do," because she was here too. And I went over after work and we had a discussion. So turned out that there had been a complaint about the tiny house. He didn't have a ton of information, but he had some. He didn't know exactly who had made the complaint yet and what the problem was. It took us a couple of days to find out what who made the complaint. So the property that I'm on is faces the road lengthwise, and the neighbor on his side, I'm at the end of the property, then my landlord's on the other end of the property. There's just that forest space in between. So the neighbor on his other side, aptly named Dick, was the one who complained. He did manage to finally talk to him, and he said something, he gave Francis a story about how he had gone to the county to try and get permission for a tiny house and been turned down. So he admitted that he was a bit of a hothead, and he, basically told them, well, my neighbor has one, and so that's how it all played out. We have since learned that that's likely not how it all played out, because in order for there to have been a file opened, you have to actually go online and make a formal complaint, fill it all out online and submit it. So it wasn't something that just happened spur of the moment. He or his wife actually went online and made a complaint. But it was based on the fact that he didn't get what he wanted, and so therefore he was going to cause some problem for somebody else, which is unfortunate and upsetting for me and for Francis all around. So the bylaw officer informed us that the inspectors would have to come, but that wouldn't happen until the new year, because this was a few weeks before Christmas. So I put it out of my mind as much as I could. Keen came to visit over Christmas. We had a very nice time. I managed to forget about it pretty much most days for that time period, which was very nice. But come January, the inspectors came, and what we had was the county building inspector and then Island Health environmental inspector came, along with the bylaw officer. They came on a Wednesday, doesn't matter. Anyways, they came to inspect the house. The building inspector, I did hear him say to the bylaw officer, because I had handed him all the information on the builder, the certification of the house, that sort of thing, and he had seen the certification sticker, the CSA sticker on it. And I heard him say to her that he was happy to see that, because his words were something to the effect of, "You should see some of the houses we see. They're poorly built, dangerously built." So he was happy to see the CSA certification. However, he still had an issue with the fact that it was on a trailer. So the rules, the bylaws are very confusing, not very clear. The the rules are so confusingly worded. If this was a mobile home, there would have been no problem. If this was a house on a foundation, there would be no problem. A tiny house on the foundation. But because it was on a trailer, even though the tires are off and it's blocked up and skirted in, that was still not to their code, their rules. And so that was going to be a problem. You can apply for a variance, or no, that's not the word, exemption. I know that that's not the right word, but that's basically it, to it. But that's a long process and it's an expensive process. And that's something that my landlord had been looking into doing. So he said he was going to get back to us by the end of the week. We didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks, and that's when we found out that the problem was that the house was not on a permanent foundation. But he gave us the suggestion, the option of literally cutting the axles off of the trailer and affixing it permanently to a foundation on the property. Well, the problem with that is that this is not my property and this is not my forever spot. It's a lovely spot and I'd certainly like to be here for a few years, but I don't own this property, and my landlord doesn't own my house, so affixing it permanently to a foundation defeats the purpose of building the tiny house the way I built it. In the meantime, we get an email from the health inspector, the city island health environmental inspector, that she wanted to inspect my toilet because it's a compost toilet and she'd apparently never seen anything besides a bucket and sawdust. So she was you have to have a toilet that is compliant, and so that meets these guidelines. There's a new manual that they had just published about 6 months ago that goes over compost toilets, guidelines and rules for compost toilets, and the waste disposals from them. And so the toilet had to meet those guidelines. And so I asked her, well, what toilets do? She said, well, we don't have any that do yet because this is brand new. So when she came to inspect the toilet, which was kind of ridiculous, I got to say, there's 3 adults, 3 grown people standing in my bathroom staring at my toilet. Well, she was happy to see how the toilet worked, that the solids and the liquids were separated, that the solids were being disposed of properly. She did have an issue about the French drain, but my landlord had already been talking to a contractor about getting a septic tank put in so that the wastewater could go into that. So that could have been addressed. But she did say that I needed a wastewater engineer to sign off on my toilet based on those guidelines. So I said, okay, excellent. Can you give me a name? No. Well, is there somewhere where I can find a list of people that are qualified for that? Well, no, because these are brand new. There's a list of wastewater engineers on the county website, but none of this, we're the first tiny house, first situation where this has been applied, and so therefore there was nobody that she could recommend that actually was familiar with those. But she did give me the name of the fellow who wrote him, and I was able to find him, and he lives on Thetis Island, which is just off of Chemainus, the coast of Chemainus. So I did contact him, thinking that, okay, we have some time because the paperwork had been started for getting the exemption, but or the research had been started for that. We get that toilet certified somehow. I don't know exactly what needed to be done, and we could get that tank put in. But in the meantime, last week he got a letter saying that I couldn't live in the house while this this exemption process was going through. I had until the end of May to move out of the house because I wasn't allowed to live here because of the fact that it's not on a foundation, which is very, very disappointing and honestly ridiculous. You know, given that there's the government, counties, the county governments and the provincial governments are talking nonstop about addressing the affordable housing issue, the affordable housing crisis. and yet they make it so difficult to find a way to make that reality. I mean, they would rather see me live in the van than live in my safe and warm and professionally built, CSA certified tiny house, only because the fact that there are still axles on this trailer and it's not affixed to a permanent foundation. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But anyways. So I have started the process of looking for another spot. I have already talked to 2 potential landlords. One is on the Sunshine Coast. If you don't know what the Sunshine Coast is, you have the mainland of BC, where Vancouver City is, and then you have Vancouver Island, which is the big island off the coast of that. But in between are a bunch of other islands, and that is called the Sunshine Coast. There are ferries that go over there, and in between those islands, and then there's a ferry from those islands to the mainland. In order to get there from here, it's 2 ferries, but it is a beautiful spot. It's private. There is no zoning on the land there, so there would never be a problem in the future, and it would be secure. I would never have to face this again. The other property is just outside of Nanaimo, and it's a beautiful spot. It's in a residential area, sort of acreage type area. Again, it wouldn't be technically a legal spot, but they have had RV renters there for a while, and all of the neighbors have been fine with it and are welcoming of it. Ooh, did you hear that? They took down a tree. And it is a beautiful spot as well. It's a little smaller. And again, that uncertainty is still there. So I haven't decided, obviously. I'm still at the beginning stages of looking. But that's where it is, guys. I'm going to have to move the tiny house because, it doesn't, even if we were able to do that exemption process, it's expensive. If the landlord was able to do it and go through that process, there's still a 50% chance or less or more that the county would still say no, and I would find myself in this place yet again. It's really unfortunate because none of the other neighbors have a problem, and I am the quietest person on this road. But it only takes one person to cause this much disruption and stress and pain. So it is what it is, though. It will make a great story someday down the road, and it makes great content for the channel. And if I go through this, that means that I can help somebody else maybe avoid this or go through this process. The county rules are changing, but they're just not going to change fast enough for me. I would have to would have to move out of the tiny house while that process was happening. And obviously, I don't want to do that. I don't want to find myself in this place again either. It has been very stressful, very, very stressful, and has kept me awake nights. But again, that all falls in the so what category. It's happened. There's nothing I can do about that. You can't turn back time. The what that matters is what now, and that is what can I find that would be a perfect fit for me. Either way, it's going to be expensive to get the house ready to move again and have it moved. But it doesn't have to go very far this time. It may have to go back on a ferry or 2, but at least it's close. We're talking, an hour's worth of a trip versus, the 2 days that it took me to get to the island. Either way, I'll still be on the West Coast, and we'll be fine. if you know of anybody who's got land around here that that would accept a tiny house that's private, that's tucked away from people and prying eyes, nosy noses, please let me know. Reach out, send me an email and let me know. My email is mybigtinyhouselife@yahoo.com. I would love to talk to those people. But yeah, obviously this process has been going on for a while, but I waited to share it with you until I knew what was happening. Either we had figured it out and I got to stay and I could share that process, or it came down to the point where I have to go. And it looks like I'm going to have to go. They've given me to the end of May to move out of here, but I'm sure that if I had somewhere to go that was, the middle of May or even the end of May, I could make that work. But that's the way it is. Am I disappointed? Absolutely. I'm kind of crushed because this is such a beautiful spot. I was really looking forward to spending a summer here and putting up some container gardens and just enjoying this area. And I love my landlords, that they are amazing, and I've really, really, really enjoyed being their neighbor. But ultimately, the government wants to get their nose into everybody's business instead of finding a way to make things work. This just black and white for them, and that is really unfortunate. It really, well, it just really makes me sad. But I'll be fine. We'll find a way to get Serendipity her new home. And I just would appreciate your positive energy being sent my way, your well wishes, any information that you might have. That's the situation. So anyways, guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. Remember, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, be brave. I love you, and I'll see you next Sunday.